All right, so it's middle of the NBA offseason, and what better time than now than to speculate on how the next season is going to go. So, obviously, me from Toronto, let's start with the Toronto Raptors. And I'm not gonna lie, man, I've been seeing a lot of things with the Toronto Raptors lately. A lot of rumors, a lot of speculation. And the one thing that seems to be pretty clear to me is everyone's in the same boat in the sense of no one really knows how to like how to really get a strong pulse on this team. What to really expect from this team next year, right? If you look at the starting five plus the depth of this team, it's solid, right? You have Scotty Barnes, you got Emmanuel Quickly, you got RJ Barrett all of last year. You throw BI into the mix. You have Jakob Poeltl, who took a massive step last year, in my opinion. I think he was probably the Raptors' most consistent, best player throughout the all 82 games, however many games he played last year. And then you look at the bench, Jamal Shea, Grady Dick, Ochai Agbaji, CMB now just got drafted, Jonathan Mobo, Jacoby Walter. Like it's a solid starting five. It's a very solid rotation, is what I'll say. Um, I mean, it came out just a few weeks ago or last week or so. Brandon Ingram said that they're making the playoffs for sure. You know what I mean? That's a big thing. I mean, it's one thing for me to say it. It's one thing, it's the other thing for the player to say it. Right. And he said playoffs for sure and kind of just grazed over that. Like, that's just, yeah, whatever. No, brother, that's not really a whatever thing. But then if you really think about what he's saying, it's like, you can kind of see it. I mean, if you look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference right now, there's a lot of moving pieces. A lot of things have been going on. Indiana, you think they might take a little bit of a step back. Obviously, they just made the finals, but Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles in Game 7. They shut him down for the season, right? Boston's in the same boat, right? Jason Tatum tore his Achilles also against the Knicks. And they also went on a fire sale, letting go of Drew Holiday, letting go of Porzingis, trying to get a little bit cheaper, I guess, because they know they're not going to compete this year without JT. Um, the Bucks, same type of scenario, would have been the same scenario. Obviously, Dame also went down with an Achilles injury. Achilles is crazy. Wow, I'm just realizing that they're all Achilles. But Milwaukee kind of gave up on that whole Dame and Giannis era, anyways. Obviously, with Dame going to sign with Portland now. And then who knows where Giannis is really gonna where Giannis' head's at. I know Giannis is a loyal to the soil kind of guy, but you know what I mean, brother. At this point, you're hurting yourself. You can't be wasting the prime of your career over there in Wisconsin. No disrespect to Wisconsin or whatever they got going on there. Packers, cheeseheads, all that kind of stuff, whatever. Um, but given all those things, I can see a scenario where the Raptors are able to kind of interject themselves into the sixth seed, right? Let's say that's optimism. Because I can also see them being, playing one and done team, 10th seed in the East, very underwhelming, everything like that, right? It's like I said, it's a very weird team to look at, right? I think let's just look at the positives first, okay? I think the most glaring positive about this team is they're young. They all fit the same timeline, right? I think Jakob Poeltl is like the oldest player in that core, and he might be 30 now. I think he's 29, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure he's 29. After that, like BI is 27, so he's entering what should be the prime of his career. Emmanuel Quickly's, I think, not far behind that if he's not already 27. Maybe he's 26, I think. RJ Barrett's 25, and then it just gets younger from there, right? You have a lot of guys that um, can grow together. And if this team's able to grow together and they keep the core of them together, team could blossom into a real powerhouse in the East. You know what I mean? And everyone's going to be peaking around the same age on the same time frame. And that's, I think, the team's biggest positive, right? Another big positive, or I'm choosing to call it as a positive, is because everybody is so young and still relatively high in value, this team has potential to make a quote unquote blockbuster trade if need be, right? I'm not saying that's necessarily a trade for Giannis, because I know that was a big thing that people were talking about before. But if you take RJ Barrett, I know RJ Barrett's a guy that obviously wants to be a Toronto Raptor, but I think ever since the Brandon Ingram trade happened, people have kind of thought that, okay, maybe RJ's days in Toronto are a little bit numbered because you don't need two flat out scorers like that. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I just feel like it kind of makes one of the two of them a little bit redundant. Personally, I'm not saying it can't work out, but if you took someone like RJ Barrett, who I wrote down their contracts because we'll get into this afterwards, but RJ right now he signed this with the Knicks, signed 4 years, 107, right? That's a lot of money. He has money to match that of another superstar, plus if you center RJ with a couple other pieces, young pieces, draft capital, so that and so forth, you can put your hands in a lot of different pots for disgruntled stars, we'll call them around the league, because there always is a few of them every now and then. Um, those are the two biggest positives of the team for me. Super young and the ability, well, they have assets. They have young assets that gives them the ability to make a bigger trade moving forward if they feel that that's the route they want to go down. Um, Kind of what I just got into with with RJ's contract and everybody else's contract is also one of the biggest negatives of the team, though. This team is crazy expensive. Like this team is ridiculously expensive. I wrote down the contracts of the starting five, projected starting five. Um, yeah, Scotty Barnes, 5 years max contract. I'm not saying I have a problem with that. That's whatever. 5 years, 225, right? And it could go up to 270 with incentives like player performance based stuff, everything like that. Manuel quickly, 5 years, 175. Brandon Ingram, who they just got those done this last offseason, by the way. Brandon Ingram, who they just extended also, 3 years, 120. We just went over RJ Barrett, 4 years, 107. Jakob Proto, 3 years, 84 million. Like that's a lot of money tied into those five guys, and more specifically, five guys that, with all due respect, haven't done anything crazy yet to leave a lasting mark in the NBA to be earning that much money right away. Right. And this is where I don't think this is unique to the Toronto Raptors. I'm not trying to say this is unique to the Raptors or that they're doing anything wrong or whatever. I think this is just what happens when teams have young players, or in the Raptors case, an abundance of young players, all kind of in the similar stage now where I'm gonna call it projection contracts. You're handing out all this money to guys that you're not giving them this money for what they currently can do. You're not giving them this money for what they've been doing and you hope they continue to do. You're giving them all this money for what they will become, right? You're projecting. Scotty Barnes case, 5 years, 225, 5 year max contract. I'm not giving Scotty Barnes 225 for what he is right now, right? I don't think anybody is. I'll give him that much money if, I'm hoping that in, let's say, year three of his 5 year contract, he's always got his name up there with, top three in Defensive Player of the Year votings. And he's one of the best point forwards in the league, a premier two-way player, two-way wing, right? One of the best leaders, young leaders in the NBA. Like that's what you're kind of giving him that much money for what he can become, right? And you can make the same case with IQ, with Brandon Ingram, with RJ Barrett if he decides to, if they decide to keep him and everything like that. And like I said, not necessarily anything wrong that they did with that. It's just that can be a very dangerous game because that's at a certain point in guys' careers, you kind of know, okay, this is what they are. It's not really going to be that much of a progression from here. And at that point, you just kind of hope that the money that you gave them today will match what they become later on. That's all I'm saying. It's not unique to the Raptors, but it is a thing. Um, the other negative, and I don't even want to necessarily call it negative because it's kind of the same thing for every single team whenever you add a big piece. Brandon Ingram obviously being a more ball dominant player, you're gonna have to see how that actually works. How are you gonna squeeze Emmanuel quickly, RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes on the same court? How are you gonna make it work? Right? Scotty Barnes is a very intelligent player. I know he can do this off-ball stuff. He's a great cutter, everything like that. I'm not worried about him. Emmanuel quickly, obviously being your floor general point guard, ball's gonna be in his hands a lot. The final two comes down to RJ Barrett and Brandon Ingram, what I was going into before, where I feel personally their play styles are a little bit redundant. I think RJ Barrett is a more capable defender than Brandon Ingram is, and I think he's a lot more of a willing playmaker than people want to give him credit for, right? Obviously, his big knock is the efficiency and everything like that, but I think he showed that in spurts earlier last season when everyone was injured. Like IQ was out, Scotty was out, and it was kind of like the RJ Barrett, Grady Dick show. Like that's what you were seeing earlier on in the season. Um, and because of that, I feel like there's a scenario where if you look at the projected lineups and maybe you flip RJ Barrett and like Ochai Agbaji, right? You put Ochai on the top line with those guys, and you have RJ running the second unit because I think he showed that he can do that, right? That way you kind of alleviate some of the shots being taken on the starting lineup, right? Ochai is not going to take as many shots. He can key in more on the defensive side of the ball and everything like that. And then on the second unit, you have a real puncher with RJ Barrett who can take as many shots as he really pleases at that point with Grady Dick. Um, that's just something I feel that they could explore maybe, or maybe there's another way that they can work it out. I don't really know. I'm not an NBA coach. I'm just a fan speculating. Um, the other thing I really want to get into, and it's not necessarily, I'm not putting this down as a positive or a negative, and it isn't something I've really heard people talk about yet, because I guess there's not really any need to do that right now. Is how this team is going to look moving forward without Masai Ujiri. And obviously, if you know the Raptors organization, you've been seeing how they've been building and you've been seeing everything like pre-championship, everything like that. You know how big of an impact Masai Ujiri had in the organization in terms of the culture, the attraction for different players to come play here. It was massive. Everyone on the team right now was either drafted, signed here in free agency or whatever, or got traded to this team under Masai Ujiri, under the impression that this is the guy that's going to be the forefront of the team. I give credit to Bobby Webster as well, but Masai is a very integral piece of that, um, of people wanting to come here. All these guys that I just mentioned that we just extended to these massive contracts did that under the impression of, yeah, Masai is going to be the guy that's here because Masai believes in me. Masai has the direction of this is where the team's going and this is how we're going to progress, this and the third. Who's to say that whoever from MLSC that comes down and is looking at the Raptors and kind of like, Brandon Ingram's a little bit expensive, Manuel Quickly's a little bit expensive, Scotty Barnes a little bit expensive, whatever the case may be. You don't know how teams can change once you lose your president, right? Your team president, or anyone big in the front office, right? I think it obviously I'm saying Masai Ujiri because I think he's been more the face of that front office along with Bobby Webster, but Masai is the real spokesperson that everyone's been seeing a lot of times. Realistically, it'd probably be the same issue if Bobby Webster decided to go, right? We don't have to get into all the front office talk. That's just total speculation. That's not me hearing it from anywhere else. That's just me wondering how things would look. Um, but yeah, man, I think to be a Raptors fan right now, there's a lot of reasons for you to be excited. There's also a lot of reasons for you to be speculative of how the season's going to go. But the one thing I feel like people can't deny is that this is by far one of the most exciting Raptors teams that we've had in a while.